Hey, Scmidlifers. Welcome to the Midlife Scmidlife podcast. I am so excited to kick off this season where we are talking to guests and learning how they got started. I'm hoping that this season will be one of inspiration for you to look at your own journey, to find inspiration, to be brave and courageous, and to take steps toward those things that you've always wanted to do. Our first guest is Clarissa Castillo-Ramsey, and I know you're just going to love her infectious energy and be inspired by her story. So let's go ahead and jump into the conversation. Clarissa, I was thinking about this morning before we started our interview, and I thought, when was it that we connected online? Because we don't know each other in person. I'm using air quotes here, but I know that we've been connected for a while. And I think it was when I was running Midlife Scmidlife the first time, maybe 2016. Does that sound right?
Yes. Yeah, it was definitely a couple years ago. And I was starting to think about, maybe I want to start a podcast. And I remember just searching for different podcasts. And I think I wanted to use midlife in my title.
Okay, yeah.
And
right.
That is how I found you. And I remember sending you, I feel like I sent you, I don't know if it was an email or a DM somewhere, but I started listening to your podcast and I was like, oh my God, I'm just loving what you're doing.
Awesome. I love that. And actually, I think you were one of the first people I heard from, because sometimes when you're doing a podcast, it can just kind of feel like you're talking into the ether, right? It's just like you're releasing it in the air and you're not really sure if it's connecting. And so I remember getting your email and I just thought, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. So that was 5 years ago. It's kind of crazy.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe it.
We've had the ability to get to know each other more and talk, and you've invited me to be part of your projects. And so I'm just really excited to have you here today. And we're going to kick off the series that I'm doing called How They Got Started. And I'm excited to hear about your journey, about how you started and then how you got to where you are now.
Oh my goodness. And thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I'm going to read the intro that you sent me because whenever I have guests on the show, whenever I've invited guests on the show, I want to know a little bit more about them. So I asked them a couple questions before we get started. So I really loved your intro. So I'm going to go ahead and just read it word for word because there's some points in here that I'm like, oh, I can't wait to dive in. So she shared with me, Clarissa, she is a multi-passion entrepreneur, abstract artist, leadership and life coach, and author. Clarissa helps men and women who are ready to transition out of the 9-to-5. She works with them to craft their corporate exit plan and start building their creative business. Clarissa is a serial career pivoter. I love that. She's worked in a variety of industries, from retail to higher education to healthcare and other places in between. Art and championing developing others have been her through lines in life. In 2010, she landed her dream job as an internal development coach for a top-ranking healthcare organization. By 2018, she knew it was time to pivot again. That's when she decided to write about her desire to move to entrepreneurship. And in 2020, she self-published her book, Painting Your Path, which I'm so honored to be a part of too. When she is not helping clients, you can find Clarissa hiking, hosting creative gatherings and workshops. She also loves karaoke and coffee. That's awesome. So karaoke and coffee together, or is that a separate?
It's usually separate, but it could be together because I could karaoke any time of the day.
Funny because karaoke, I've always told my husband, if I ever want to do karaoke, I've had way too much to drink and it's time to take me home. So
that is so funny.
But maybe one day I can do it with you and then I'll be, I'll be more. So as we're talking about, I just read your intro and as we're talking about how you got started, I really loved the term that you used, serial career pivoter. I don't know. Because I feel that way about myself as well. So tell me for yourself what that means to you.
Right. So yes, I am I was a serial career pivoter because I feel like many of us, especially, in our generation, Liz, we really grew up kind of, at least for me, like trying to be that good girl, doing what my parents told me to do, really listening to other people and being so focused on, well, what does everybody else think I should do? And so for me, like when it came to career, honestly, what I really wanted to do was do something in the human resources space. And I don't think I've really shared this story with many, but like I knew, like there was one class in college that I liked, and it was organizational behavior. And I just thought that was such a cool field, but it was so new back then that I didn't have the confidence in myself to try and pursue it. So I went the safe route. And I remember just interviewing for whatever companies came to the campus, and I eventually landed a job in retail management. And I just, did it for a couple years, hated it. I don't know if you ever did retail, Liz, but
Oh yeah.
long hours. And, thank God it was in my 20s because I had a lot of energy. And, but, despite really not, it just not really being a fit for me, there were still a lot of things that I grew from it, like having to work with other people and having to manage other people. And I even remember the first people that I managed were like 3 times my age. They were like grandmas who were just, working part-time to just bring income. And here I was managing them, this 21-year-old, 22-year-old person, and really not knowing how to manage. And anywho, I learned a ton from them. And then I just felt like this tugging in my heart, this is not for me. And as you mentioned in my intro, as I wrote, like art was always a through line. Art and like, working with other people, developing other people was something I've always been curious about. And so I thought, you know what, I want to pivot and get out of this, move on. And so I moved out to California and decided I'm going to pursue a career in graphic design, because that was also something that I was interested in.
Yeah.
And so, for me, this pivoting, I won't go through my whole career because that's like almost 30 years. And we don't have all day. But as I shifted, pivoted, evolved, I feel like I was getting one step closer to where I really wanted to be. And so for a lot of my career, I felt like these little shifts, pivots, evolving into somebody else, and picking up the learning along the way really helped me to get to where I am today.
Yeah. Yeah. I can, excuse me, I can hear myself in that share of yours because I've had a very similar journey. And you mentioned something interesting. You said you could tell basically it was one step closer to where you wanted to be. Did you know where you wanted to be?
I think I knew where my next was going to be.
Okay.
And so I might, so working in the graphic design field, I didn't see that I would be, working more in the coaching space, but I knew that I had to pursue this creative, this creative curiosity job. And so for me, that graphic design position really filled that need.
Yeah. That's really so I'm saying this and I'm not meaning this in a negative way at all but it's sort of a big jump, right? I'm retail management and now I'm going to be a graphic designer. There was like
Yep.
this, it's like
Yeah,
you just leapt over.
I did.
Right. So,
I
so
totally did.
tell me how that happened, because did you have
Yeah.
graphic design experience, or was it just like, I think I can do this and I'm going to jump
Great
in and do
question.
it?
Great question. So what was happening was at my retail job, um, we would do cross promotions with other stores. And that was something that my boss was really good at. And so I remember she was working with, I think, one of the anchor stores in the mall. And
Mhm.
and it was just fun working with her, trying to figure out like, oh, what kind of promotion can we do? And how can we market our event? And I wasn't so much interested in, like all the languaging, but I was really interested more in like, how are we going to present this? How are we going to put this together on a flyer? Or,
Right.
how are we going to post it? And so that I remember that moment, I was like, And also in college, I do remember there were people who were kind of getting into that career too.
Mhm.
And so that was a little bit in the back of my head in my college
Right.
time as well. And so, um, and then I kind of, after like that kind of door opened up where I was like, ooh, promotions, ooh, putting a flyer together, I started getting back into art.
Oh,
And
okay. Yeah.
I was like just doodling and doing things like that. And I decided to just take an art course and kind of just get back into that mode, because I had been away from it for a while. Like in
Mhm.
college, I was all business, the business program. That's what I need to do. That's what I got to focus
Right.
on.
Right.
And anyway, so I took an art course, and my teacher, what like nothing I did was good. Like
Mm.
if you've ever taken an art course, Liz, every week you put up your assignment and you get a criticized.
Oh boy.
And that's what they called it, crit. It's time for our crit. And what horrible language.
It
And
is.
isn't that terrible?
It is
And
terrible.
yeah, a crit. And so we had to put our work up. I'm not kidding you. I would say, I don't know, let's just say we had 10 assignments. I think 9 out of the 10 assignments, my teacher really had nothing good to say about what I put up there. And it was like devastating to me. But at the same time, at that age, I was like, well, I'm going to prove you wrong, lady. And so I kind of had that attitude. And so, anyways, that class finished. And I was like, all right, so, well, that's interesting. I'm glad I went through it, glad I at least got my feet wet.
Mhm.
And I decided to leave Boston because that's where I was. I went to Boston College, and the guy I was dating at the time, before we even got together, he had plans to leave Boston and move out to California.
Mhm.
So I left with him and moved to California, and I just decided, I said, you
Mhm.
know what, I'm going to pursue this new career,
Yeah.
if that means I need to go back to school. And so that's what I did. I got a certificate in graphic design,
Mhm.
and then I just started looking for a job. And and also when I moved to California, I just had no plan. I just was like, I'll figure it out. I'll get a job somehow. I have a little bit of savings, and let's just make this work. And
Right.
that was my
Right.
attitude. And so that's kind of how I shifted into that.
Yeah. I wish we all could remember ourselves in the 20s, right? Like because I think a lot of us had that attitude. It's like, I don't have a plan. Heck, I'm just
Right.
gonna go for it, right? And figure
I'm
this
just going
out.
to
And I
roll
think
with it.
right. And we get older and then we like overthink everything. And then we have to have a plan and we have to know what's next. And we
Right.
and how many times do we like squash our own dreams
Oh my
by that?
goodness. Yes. I
We
know.
should
I
we should
really,
really, yeah.
yeah. I have to really, like, anytime I'm feeling kind of stuck like that, I kind of have to remind myself, okay, you've done this before.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's a good reminder actually of reminding ourselves, like we've been in similar situations. We have done the thing that we didn't know how to do, and maybe we didn't succeed, but maybe we did. Most often we did, and we have forgotten about that. And
Yeah.
so it's definitely a good reminder to remember the little risk taking that we have done in our lives.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah. So now we're leading up to 2010. Um, and it sounds like that was when you landed your dream job, that you became an internal development coach for a top ranking healthcare organization. So yeah, tell me about that. First of all, I think it's amazing. I'm not sure the work you did, but just the fact that in 2010, I'm using air quotes, coach was used, because coaching to me is just now hitting its stride, where it's more commonplace organizations are now, they are hiring coaches. So to me, it's super fascinating that in 2010, this is something that you were able to, this was part of your career path.
Yeah. And so how I got there was, so in the graphic design job that I had, I did that for a number of years. And then once again, I got to a point where I just felt like, you know what, been there, done that, done that for
Mm.
many years. And what I also noticed was just a lot of, I don't know, work drama. Can you relate to
Okay.
that?
Of
And
course.
so, so there was, I noticed that. And there was a lady who came to the organization to do some, I think she called herself like a communication expert. So she was really there to help the company just with the communication and leadership and all that good stuff. And so she took us all through like just a series of exercises where we shared what we loved about working at the company, what we didn't like,
Mm-hmm.
and then that fascinated me too, because then that reminded me of that organizational behavior course that I took
Right.
back in college. And so I remember talking to the HR director at the company and just saying, I think it's time for me to pivot.
Oh,
And I'm
wow.
really getting interested in, I think I want to, scratch the itch of, human resource management and kind of
Mhm.
getting to that field. And so what I did was I went to grad school. I started
Mhm.
grad school in 2005. And while I was still working at the company I was at, and for the first year of grad school, I mean, it was great. I was able to work full time and go to school full time, and balance that. But then as the program proceeded, it got more difficult. I had to take statistics, and
Ooh.
it's not my jam.
Oh my gosh.
So
Yeah.
I had to part ways with the company. Um, I think I left in 2006 because they needed to. Was it 2006 or 2007? I can't remember, but they really needed somebody there full time, and I was there full time, but not really.
Mhm. Right, right.
And so it was just time for me to shift again
Mhm.
and move on. And so um, we both agreed to like an end date. And guess what, Liz? No plan. I had no plan once again,
Good for
except
you.
except that I was in school.
Mhm.
And so I just remember this was like, I think around summertime when I left. So I think there was a break from school. So I went out to Florida to visit my best friend, just to kind of reset, recenter, be with her. And and then eventually landed a job in an HR consulting organization while I was going to school. long story longer, the program ended. I did my dissertation in December of 2010. And earlier in 2010, I got a call from one of my friends who I worked with at the graphic design job.
Okay.
And she said, Clarissa, and at this point, like I had taken a coaching class. I should also say I did a coaching program with CTI, the Coaches Training Institute. So I kind of doubled down on the coaching piece.
Yeah.
And I was telling everybody, hey, I want to be a coach. I want to do this. It's time for me to transition again. And so one of my very dear friends said, hey, I think I have the perfect job for you. It's an internal development coach here at the company I'm at. And would you be interested? And I was like, oh, hell yes, I am.
Yeah.
And it's crazy too, Liz, because I remember and I feel like my story is all over the place.
No, it's great.
I remember when my friend called me, I was actually at a workshop called The Bigger Game. And I remember literally telling the people in this group I was in this workshop that I wanted to be a coach and I wanted to work for an organization. And that's what I really wanted. I think we had to really talk about, well, what is it that we really, want to manifest? And so no joke, like during that workshop, I remember being on a lunch break, checking my messages, and it was my friend saying, I have the perfect job for you. I think, call me back. And I remember after that break, going back to the workshop saying, oh my God, you're never going to believe this. Guess what just happened to me? Oh my gosh, this manifestation, it just really works. And I told everybody like what had happened. And so that started, the movement of me transitioning into my dream job.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great story. Yeah. And I want to kind of do a little segue because I know that the term manifestation, again, I'm using air quotes, that can to some people have kind of a negative kind of a like, oh, it's so woo woo, or, it's just, there are people who have taken that to an extreme. But really what you were doing is setting your intention. Like, this is what I want. You were sharing it with people, not just at the workshop, but your friends, people who knew you. You were really putting it out there. And that's what manifestation is.
Yes.
It's just like, you're not holding it in and thinking and wishing that it's going to fall from the sky.
Magically. Right.
You were actively putting it out there. And then to see it come back, I have goosebumps just thinking about that. That's awesome. Yes. It's just a great story and a great reminder, right? Like, we need to be sharing what we want and what we're working toward with the people who know us, because connection is the best way for us to really, I believe, just kind of get everything that we want in life, but especially when we are pursuing change, and pursuing something new.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Putting it out there. And that's, for me, manifesting is just setting, like you said, exactly. Setting that intention and taking that inspired action, because otherwise, that's the other half of the equation. I think sometimes people forget, like, or they don't want to do.
Right. You can't just make a vision board and then think, okay, I'm manifesting. So done. It does take, if only. So it does take inspired action for sure. Yeah. So now we're going to move into the point where this is kind of where, you and I had already connected through the podcast. And then I got an email from you and I don't remember it word for word, but you were like, hey, Liz, I'm going to write this book. And I want to know if you'd be open to being interviewed. And so, obviously by now you have felt this shift of like, okay, now it's time for something new. And so you did it. I mean, you published a book. So tell me like what that was. What was the inspiration there? to make
Yes.
that happen?
So, yeah, thank you. So a theme in my interview in my life is, every so many years, I am just finding myself at a point of, questioning, reflecting, is this
Mhm.
really where I want to be? And I loved doing my internal development coaching job.
Mhm.
And over time, so that started in 2010, and then eventually that role disappeared. So
Mhm.
I ended up getting promoted a couple of times within the organization, and it was great. It was great money, great perks. I had a great team that I enjoyed working with. And then in 2018, though, I kind of felt this nudge again.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I was feeling like, you know, well, and I should also take a step back. So I would say, like, around, I think it was like 2012, I had a new boss, and she asked everybody to create what she called, I thought it was a top 10 list, but I actually found the document. It was a top 12
Oh,
list. And so she
okay.
had like 12 questions on there that she wanted us to answer. And one of them was something like, what's your short-term goal?
Mhm.
Something like that. What's a short-term goal professionally? What's a long-term goal professionally? And I remember putting in my long-term goal, I wrote consultant and coach
Mhm.
dash art dash art, something like that. And
Right.
so you know what? It was that time at
Mhm.
2018. Like, I was just feeling that this has been a great ride and this is not my end game. And I knew that
Right.
this is not my end game. And so I thought it would be fun. And writing a book was on my bucket list too. So
Mhm.
I thought, you know what? I'm going to kind of look at this point in my life, kind of like I did my dissertation. For my dissertation, I interviewed like top companies on what their internal coaching program
Mm.
was. And
Mhm.
so I kind of looked at it like through that scientist, researcher, lens of, I'm going to interview these women who have just done amazing things, have painted their path, because the title of my book
Mhm.
is Painting Your Path,
Right.
and let me see what themes come up, let me see what I can
Mhm.
learn from all these
Yeah.
amazing, extraordinary women. And so that's kind of, part of the reason, part of like the evolution of the book. And in 2018 is also when I discovered podcasts, really,
Mm.
and
Mhm.
really getting into them and listening to them. And I have to give a shout out to one that really made an impact to me, on that kind of career level, which
Mhm.
it was, Don't Keep Your Day Job with
Oh,
Kathy
yeah.
Heller.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's
And
a good
because
one.
she's a creative. And
Mhm.
I remember listening to a couple of her episodes, and really, I think that decision for me to write the book, to
Mhm.
actually write it, I had been listening to a couple of her episodes and I thought, okay, it's done. It is done.
Mhm.
I'm writing this book. And I even remember writing her, and I just
Mhm.
said, thanks for your inspiration. I'm writing this book. I'm going to publish this book. And I'm even on one of her episodes, episode
That's
33. I'll
awesome.
never forget.
Yay.
And she gave me a shout out, and it was Jordan Harbinger's episode. And so anyway, so that is kind of like how that whole book idea came to be.
Mhm. Yeah. And at that point, was that like a definite point where you felt you were bringing in your art into what you want? You were kind of just you were basically painting your own path at this place is what I'm noticing,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know you want to coach, you know you want to help people um become better versions of themselves, but then you're also bringing in your art, which I feel probably has grown to be more important to you as as this time, from the time you were getting crits to this point.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. And so I also, between the time of the crit to now to 20,
Right.
let's say 2018, I had done exhibits. So the art was kind of like here and there, but it was a little bit more in the background. And I would say, like, in my graphic design time, I did a couple shows. And then during grad school, I just felt like, oh my God, I don't have time for it.
Right.
And I really missed it. And then so 2018 kind of really, I wanted to give a gift to every woman that I interviewed for my book. And I remember yours, Liz, you were like, well, I can't pick one color. You were like, I love all the colors.
Right.
And then I think you had given me a Brene Brown quote. And so I just really wanted to pour my, give back in that way to all the women that I interviewed. And you're right. It's, and it's just kind of clicking in right now that really was another like transformational, pivotal evolution of my creative side. Because after I did or as I was working on the book, that's when I also decided, you know what? I want to do something else that's fun and creative. And that's when I also started to do vision board workshops. And that's when I started to kind of expand more into my creativity that way. And it took me a while to actually publish the book, because like I was hesitating on, do I share my story or just let it be all about the women? And so many of the women in the book said, are you going to share your story? And I think at the beginning, I really, wasn't going that direction. And I was scared, Liz. It was kind of scary for me to say and put in writing, okay, I want to leave my job that I'm still at.
Oh, sure.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, like people at my work are going to read this and yada, yada, yada. It's going to be like so obvious that I don't want to stay anymore. And then I just finally got over myself and did it. Did it.
Right.
Yeah. And because truth be told, now that I'm gone, I had told I had a great conversation with my boss about my exit plan. And so at 2018, I think she already knew. Right. Like, well, I think I had a conversation with her already that, it's time for me to really start thinking about, moving on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I really love that there just became this point where you just had to get over yourself. I just feel like we all have to get there, and we really have to realize, I heard that you were concerned about, oh, my coworkers, my boss, they're going to read this and what they're going to think. And, a lot of times we push that out on other people, but in reality, it's really about us. It's really deep down inside. It's our fear. It's our, it's so much fear of change, fear of using our voice, fear of risk. I mean, all of these things. So I just, that's why I laughed, because like, oh yeah, we always have to get over ourselves.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Fear of being seen and really like, letting my authentic self come out.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then, so you released your book. It's beautiful. I do remember saying, I can't pick a favorite color. I've always had a hard time with that. It's, I'm very much a mood person, like depends on the mood. So, and it is beautiful. You've added your artwork to the book. And then from there, you created some workshops not workshops. I guess they were like what, summits
where like
you invited us all. Yeah. So, and next thing I know, you're emailing me or messaging me on Instagram and letting me know that now you're out on your own.
Yes.
And was that in 2020? Was that just last year or
So
2020?
I just left. I just left
Okay.
in July, at the end of July of this year.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Sorry. The last
Yeah.
2020, 2021, they've all kind of like,
I know, it's all like congealed
and when this,
together.
right. And when this airs, it's going to be 2022. But for the last 2 years of till now, it seems like one big expanse of time. So yes, it
Right.
was July. I remember that. So now that's like your next step. And then here you are. It's
Yes.
exciting. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's exciting. So if you were to go back to that young woman working retail management, um, would could you see that far ahead? Do you think you could see yourself, maybe not even just being an entrepreneur at that point, but just, I don't know. Not even sure what I'm asking. I just think it's interesting to think of ourselves back in those beginning stages and just look at how far
Yeah.
we've come. It's
Yeah.
just, yeah.
I know. And I feel like, if I could tell myself, like, go back to that 20-year-old, or go back to my 20-year-old self, I would just, say, really, like, instead of looking out so much, because that was so much of my growing up in my adulthood, like, instead of looking out for other people's approval, can you just be quiet and really ask yourself, what is it that you want to do?
Right.
Yeah.
Important. It's
Hmm.
important, actually, no matter what age, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I was journaling yesterday and I pulled an oracle card, and it was basically that, like, what does your soul want? And just to ask ourselves, like,
Yes,
what is that? No matter if you're 20 or if you're 50 or 60, like,
that's
what does
right.
your soul want? Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So what advice, this whole series is what I'm hoping the series does, is to inspire listeners to take the inspired action, right? To take that, to manifest, to create the
Yes.
vision board, to let ourselves dream, but then also to take that inspired action. So what advice would you give someone who's just at that point of thinking about taking inspired action?
Yeah, I would say embrace it and trust yourself. What you resist persists. I think we've heard that
Mm,
one. Like, I mean, and I have to remind myself and take a step. It doesn't matter how big or small that step is, but to really just take one step forward. And what could that be? That could be, like you said, Liz, like just taking time to dream, taking time to journal. If you like journaling and writing, take time to ask yourself, what is what's calling you? What's your next adventure? Doesn't have to be this grand life purpose thing. It can be, but I also find that sometimes that can be daunting as
yes.
well. But right? Like, but what is your soul asking for today, right now? What's that next adventure, or what's that next, you know, thing you're curious about that you could start pulling that thread, and just trust that it's the right thing for right now.
Right. That's great. Yeah. That's the right thing for right now. That's great advice. Great advice. Awesome. So we're going to bring back the Midlife hot flash. So this is going to be 10 rapid fire questions. It's funny because you kind of already answered one, but we'll go ahead and put it in here.
Yeah.
uh, so it's 60 seconds. These are going to be rapid fire
Oh, okay.
questions.
Love it.
So of course, it's always 60 seconds until I start having a conversation about your answer. So let's just hope that I that I don't do that. So we're gonna start off. Are you ready?
Yes.
Ready? Okay. All right. So first question: tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Same. Second question, favorite all-time band or musician?
Radiohead.
Okay. Favorite dessert?
Ice cream.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
An artist.
Okay, there you go. That's awesome.
Check.
Yeah, exactly. What is your current self-indulgence?
Well, I don't really watch TV, so right now it's Ted Lasso and Dexter
Yes.
New Blood.
Yes. I'm late to the Ted Lasso game, and oh my gosh, I just love that show. So love
Yes.
that. Let's see. Number 6. What is inspiring you right now?
I think so. It's nature always inspires me, and I just did a hike, and I literally everywhere I looked there were heart-shaped rocks. So
Oh,
that just
yeah.
continues to inspire me, and also just working with my clients and seeing their great results inspires me too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is kind of I'll explain this question. So what do you hope people say about you when you leave the room? So say you're at a party and then you're ready to leave, you wave goodbye, and then you have a friend who's talking to somebody that doesn't know you and they say, "Oh, that Clarissa, she is so," and then what do you hope they're going to say?
I would just hope that they say she's kind, she's inclusive, and she's uplifting.
That's lovely. So here's the question. What advice would you give your 20-year-old self? You already said it, but if you want to
I
add
have
more.
something else. Yes, I do.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Go to therapy.
Oh, yes.
Go to therapy.
Yes.
Go to therapy. Let's go to therapy.
For sure. For sure. So what would you say to other women as they are approaching midlife and maybe a little nervous about it?
Oh, just love yourself. Love yourself. Love the time that you're in. And I don't even know what midlife is, but I'm just going to say for me, like the 40s, I'm 49 at the time of this recording. And I got to say, it has been the best decade for me. And and I really believe that it's just going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. I think the older we get, the wiser we get, the more that we shed our old crap and really step into who we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's great. Great advice there. Yeah, we could have a whole conversation about what does midlife mean. Honestly, maybe you and I, that's our next episode, because
yes, would love
I've been thinking of that too. But we'll do that for another time. So the last question, this is actually a question that I ask my clients. So if you could be any animal for one day, what would you be and why?
I would be a bird. And the reason why is because in so many of my dreams that I've had my entire life have been me flying and soaring and just being like in the sky. And I don't know, I'm having this fascination with birds lately. We have a fountain in our backyard. My husband did a COVID backyard. That's what he did like in 2020. And it is so peaceful back there. And we turn on a fountain and all these birds just come, and like, I love hearing them chirp. And so I think that would be my animal for the day.
That's awesome. Any particular bird or just a bird in general?
Well, I love hummingbirds. So maybe a hummingbird.
Okay. Yeah. I love that. Well, that was your hot flash. So thanks for participating.
Thank
That's fun. I love doing that. Yeah. I love bringing that back. So Clarissa, I just thank you so much. I mean, I know it's super early for you, so to have you come on and spend this time with me and share your story and share your path and how you got started. It's just been wonderful. And I just wanted to let all the listeners know that I will have the links on where to find you on Instagram. You also have a private Facebook group. I'll have a link to the book because it's very inspirational. And then you also have an opt-in where people can get some resources that you have. A couple of them are 20 time hacks that work and the business idea generator, which sounds amazing. So I will have links to that too. And just thank you again for being here.
Oh my gosh, it was so much fun, Liz. So much fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm so glad. I'm just so glad that we're kicking this series off and you get to be the one to kick it off. So thank you so much.
Yes.
Schmidlifers, I'm going to be really very honest. I was so nervous to do that interview. It's been a while, and whenever you are turning that microphone on, there is kind of this sense of excitement because you just know there's going to be a juicy conversation in here. But there was also some nervousness going on with me. I wanted to make sure all the tech was right, and I wanted to make sure I was asking the best questions. So I really appreciate Clarissa jumping on, being my 2022 kickoff guinea pig. I had a wonderful time with her, and I hope that you did too. Be sure to join me next week for our next guest, Maura Cleary. You're going to love her story as well. And I hope that you'll be able to see from her story how life can sometimes throw you some curveballs, and there's no better way to handle those than create what you need and want. So I'll see you next week.